Tuesday night. It's cheese night. Let's get started. Hi, my name's Charlie Turnbull. I am always Charlie Turnbull. It is Tuesday. It is cheese. It's 8 o'clock. We have tonight a really interesting session. We have been talking about something called the Virtual Cheese Awards, which I don't know if you've picked up with. We talked about it last week. They are filling the void because no one's cheese judging this year because we can't. COVID rules. And they have done something that's never been done before. They are promoting cheese by doing it virtually. They've been sending cheeses all around the country to judges sitting in their offices, in their top bedrooms, maybe in their basements. And we've got one of those judges with us tonight, which is Tanny Gill. So let's go and find him. Bomb. Tanny, are you ready?
Hello,
are you
Charlie.
there?
Hi, I'm here. How are you, Charlie?
I'm extremely well. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Thank you. Very good. Very good.
So you've been judging today for the Virtual Cheese Awards. Tell us, what was it like?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was quite interesting. Virtual Cheese Awards, as you said, done for the first time with lockdown and social distancing in mind, but keeping the cheese going. It was very, very well coordinated. Got 46 different cheeses sent across all the way to Scotland.
46 cheeses.
46, yes.
How long does it take you to judge 46 cheeses?
So we were scheduled for to do the judging in 2 hours, but it kind of lasted for about 4.5 hours. So yeah.
Let me get it. So I don't know. Yesterday you had a big hamper turn up at your door.
Yes.
And I'm assuming all these cheeses were individually wrapped, and you couldn't tell what packaging they were. Is that right?
Yes. So they were. It was actually personally delivered by the virtual cheese van guy. It was not a courier. It came on Friday, all chilled, and every cheese was individually wrapped with a label and a number. So that which kind of matched with the sheets that we had that we were going to judge on. And I kept them in the fridge and got them out an hour before the judging started and followed the sequence. Every cheese was about 220 gram size. So it was manageable.
So roughly the same as the one we've got there that we're going to look at in a second. That sort of size.
Yeah, something that size. Yeah.
Wow.
And, we had a full.
Then before we go on and talk about judging and how it works and the importance of it being blind, because you cannot make a biased decision when judging. Tell us a bit about yourself, Tanny. Who are you? Why are you here?
I'm here. Thanks for having me, Charlie. I'm here because I've spent the last 17 odd years in the British cheese industry. I came traveling from Bombay and ended up on the Isle of Mull. And worked for the.
See that? Get lost, turn left when you should turn right. On the Isle of Mull, Paul McCartney singing in the background. But why not stay?
Yeah, no, but Paul McCartney's on the Moluccan Tire, the southern part. I'm on the northern part, just south of Skye. And I was with the Reeds, the Reed family, Chris and Jeff, absolutely lovely people. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just there, living at the farm, eating some great food, and making cheese with 5,000 liters of milk every day, which is quite good and physical, like the energy part of it. Until a few years later, I realized that this is something really serious. When I had accidentally visited Harrods one day on my first holiday in the UK, and I went to the food hall, and I introduced myself at the cheese counter saying, is that the Isle of Mull cheddar? I'm a cheesemaker. And one of the persons came and said, excuse me, can you come through the back door? And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And then the manager came and shook hands and says, oh, so nice to meet you. It's amazing. And I'm thinking, I'm really sorry. What's wrong over here? But it was, and then that's when I realized that this was something really serious what I'm doing. And started taking interest.
The cheesemakers, which you were one, you're not one anymore. They're revered. They're revered by chefs. The art of keeping flavor profiles in your head when so much of what cheesemaking is invisible. Sure. It's almost by sort of a magical sense of how to make it when it's rainy, how to make it when it's dry, how to make it when it's winter, how to make it when it's summer. It's an art. It's a real art.
It is absolutely. It is an art, and also what's happening is today the modern cheesemakers are not only using that art, but they're supporting that art with a lot of technology. So,
Mhm.
like you rightly say, so they've got database or information stored on their computers in the cheese making rooms, where if it is 24 degrees outside, how high are you going to heat the milk? How much
Yeah,
less salt are
yeah,
you going to add? So we would look back and say temperature outside 24 degrees, uh, green grass feed, and it will give us that in the last 25 years, these are the readings that we've taken. So it
yeah.
gives
Mhm.
us a ballpark to work on, which was quite nice to see technology used with tradition and work on that.
You think it's a benefit. You don't think it takes the kind of the bit out, that kind of extra. If
No,
science, then maybe the art
no,
goes away.
I think that extra, that bit you talk about, that's always there, and that comes with years and years of being there, and that's when you become a master in it. But when
Mhm.
we, as newbies or youngsters joining in,
Yeah,
sometimes
we.
it's
I want that said twice, by the way.
uh, when we join in, it's very difficult for them to explain us why are they doing this. But then
Mm.
they tell us, like I used to always question, why are we doing this? And she'll say, come and ask me the same thing 6 months later. And that was the answer why we did it 6 months
Mm.
ago. So
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating, absolutely.
Well, particularly the cheese like Almar, which is a long-lived cheese, and the real benefits of the decisions you make during the make don't appear for 6, 12, maybe longer months. So
Yeah, absolutely. 12, 18 months. Yeah, absolutely.
but now you're working for Clark's, I think, which is Edinburgh.
Yes, we are just based south of Edinburgh. We are specialty food distributors, and cheese is one of our main categories. Clark's has been about for 25 years in Scotland now.
Yeah, and you were telling me earlier that you're 85% food service, so COVID has, cut you off the knees, bluntly.
It has, yeah, but thankfully, a lot of the independent specialty food shops have really picked up in times like these, and people preferring to go to small independent shops than to big supermarkets.
Hmm.
So cheese and other artisan foods has taken main stage again, which has been a kind of a revival
Great,
in itself.
great.
Absolutely,
A lot of
absolutely.
a lot of people really enjoying going back to their local shop, feeling more comfortable, feeling safer there, and rediscovering foods that they haven't tasted for a while. Right,
Absolutely.
we need to keep going. I'm just going to pull out. Alison's there saying she's tasting. She's made her own cottage cheese. So people trying cheese making at home. So good for you, Alison. And we've got Mason here. He's hurling abuse already at both you and me. Sort of. So nice to see you. Stay talking to us. We're happy to be heckled, aren't we? Right. Let's talk judging. So let's set the scene. You did 45 cheeses here. That's a lot for a judging thing. The World Cheese Awards usually do about 30, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is a lot. I think, as you probably know, that when we meet at various other judging events, as including World Cheese Awards, when you know such a big number, we don't need to eat a lot. You are nibbling away to get the taste and the flavor
Yeah,
profile, and that's interesting because even people, friends, say, "How much cheese are you going to eat?" And you're
yeah,
like, "You're not really eating. You're being clever
no,
about how you're
no,
tasting."
yeah. Otherwise, you end up with the cheese sweats, and also you eat a lot of apples. The
Oh,
constant cleaning of your palate. It's like cheese, apple, cheese, apple. It's a lot of apples. You get through a lot of water. So let's set the scene for the people out there. You usually you approach a table. In your case, you've probably laid it out on your kitchen table, I'm guessing. And
yeah,
and the first thing you do is you say, right, let's put this in strength order because you've got to lead up to the big flavors.
sure.
You put the big blues at the back. You put anything that I've got an epoisse here that I'm going to taste in a second. Going to be a big flavor. Going to leave that for last. So the soft cheeses, the fresher cheeses, we're going to bring on first. Now we've got for our tasting 2 cheeses that have been sent to us that are part of, and I'm just going to do a plug here, the People's Choice Cheese Box. Okay, so you can. The Virtual Cheese Awards is all about supporting cheesemakers. It is not for profit. Any money that gets made, let's hope they make some, goes to support bursaries for cheesemakers. So we like that. and you can order the People's Choice cheese box. That sounds very Lady Diana. At 45 quid, and that gets you lots of cheeses. And these go forward to, you can taste along and contribute to the winners in some way that is explained to you on the website. 45 quid. What else do I need to tell you? Oh, yes. If you want to be part of the Saturday event, if I've understood this correctly, and no doubt they'll tell me if I haven't, you need to order tomorrow or today, tomorrow, to be part of that. So that's a good bit of fun. Be part of the judging team for the People's Choice. And we've got two of those, haven't we? We've got this chap.
Yeah.
Which is a wee goat's cheese log. Putting on my West Scottish accent there.
You're doing well.
Which I'm going to turn my light down because I think it's making it difficult to focus there. Oh, that's better. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a kind of just a gooey on the outside with a firmer towards the center. You're also seeing a little bit of orange on there, that it's got a dark rim and a white on the outside. And yours is much the same there, Tanny.
Yeah, very much.
Experienced cheese judges, what are we going to learn straight away? What pickup are we going to see there?
I mean, looking at it, of course, we know it's a goat's milk category. Interesting. What we're looking at is really the freshness, the lightness, lemoniness coming through the goat's milk. Now I've got a beautiful little slice. So as you say very rightly, going to try to show this on the camera if it can be shown. Beautiful, lovely, creamy notes on the edges, slightly chalky in the middle, and that's what we want because anything more will make it quite runny and milky.
So we would look at this, and there's two. Well, there can be no rind, but we would look at this cheese. We're not going to know what it's going to be in a category that's probably tell us only that it's goat's milk. So there's two questions we might ask ourselves. One, what is the rind? Two, what do they use to set it or coagulate it? Now, classically, old school goat's logs were fully lactic set, which means they would be using only acid to make the cheese set. But modern cheese making, they will be introducing a degree of rennet, up to quite a lot of rennet. Now, I'm looking at this, and Tanya, I don't know what you think, but this feels to me like a rennet set cheese, what we're seeing here.
You're right. Yes, definitely does feel like rennet set cheese because it's the setting is quite compact.
Yes,
you know, it's quite together. It's not loose.
It was explained to me by a cheesemaker that a rennet set cheese has, if you cut through it, it has that impact of a bit like putting your thumb over a tennis ball going the wrong way. It has lots of little bits that fluff up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that is an indication of a lactic set cheese, whereas a rennet set has what you're talking about, this the dense texture, which can go on to make really good hard cheeses and make quite. So we've got so as a learning from a judge point of view, we're going, okay, it's a modern interpretation. The second thing we're looking at is the rind. Now, again, the old school, the Saint-Maur de Touraine would have a geotrichum rind or something like that. So a yeast-based rind. But do you think this is geotrichum, Tanny? I mean, what do you think this rind is?
So I think this is traditional. I mean, an adaptation of the tradition. It's probably food ash that has been dusted on, and there is geotrichum underneath, which comes through, which gives that beautiful white snow dusty look to it. So it's not looking black, but it's looking almost kind of delicately white, and you can see the black.
It's like it's got a little dusting of flour, as you said.
Absolutely.
I think I'm going to slightly disagree with you here, and this happens when you're judging. I think this is a predominant. This is a mixed rind with a lot of camembert in there. I think there's a fair amount of camembert mold with the yeast. It's still very fragile, which suggests it is not a full camembert yarn. So again, that's telling us a bit about the cheese. So what we would take away as judges here is this is not a classic style. This is a modern interpretation. It's going to be part of the, assuming it's British, the British Renaissance in cheese. So we can't bring to it any precedent. It stands alone in its favor. It's going its own direction. Ooh. Right, should we taste it? See, all that, we're judging this cheese, we haven't even tasted it yet.
Yeah.
So here we go. It's got a very thick, creamy texture, isn't it?
Very creamy, yes.
Mm.
And it's interesting you talked about the rind, because same cheese, when you taste it without the rind, is very different to when you taste it with the rind.
Mm. Mm. Now, this cheese, I believe, has, and I'm not going to use it in a rude way at all, but the texture is almost towards that vache qui rit, you know, that soft, pasty texture,
Yeah.
which gives sweet, easy eat. But
Yeah.
the rind adds quite a lot of complexity. You're getting a bit of mustiness, you're getting a bit of mushroom.
Almost meaty notes to it.
Mm.
And you know that milky, creamy to that meaty finish that comes through the rind.
Absolutely right.
You know,
And a little bit of bitterness as well there is coming in from the rind.
correct.
Mm.
I mean, I think without the rind, it almost feels like you can eat it as a spreadable cheese.
Almost spreadable. Yeah.
You know, almost spreadable.
Mm.
And so that's a good kind of way of creating a balance of having the rind and the pate together to give almost two different flavors in one bite.
Yeah. I mean, when you're tasting camemberts, they will often encourage you to taste the gooey element, the inside the rind, separate from the center, which is often differently flavored. So I'm just going to do that. They're very closely flavored, actually. There's not a huge difference.
Yeah.
There's just a little more sourness in the center, I think.
Because of chalkiness in there, yeah.
Mm. Interesting cheese.
Very interesting, yeah.
So at the end of the program, team, we'll tell you what these were, so you can enjoy them. We'll have the big reveal. But this is, I would definitely describe this as a very modern interpretation of a traditional style. And the flavors and textures have moved materially away from old-fashioned, delivered some nice creamy textures. So it's good. I mean, we're not judging these because the people who make them might be watching, and we're not going to be. It's not. They're all good cheeses. Love these cheeses. It was good.
It was great, and probably even the same cheese as we talked earlier about its texture and the pate. The same cheese could be eaten slightly younger, would give a more different profile. It'll be a lot more fudgy or fluffy on the palate.
Yeah.
Most,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is, again, great to eat and, you know, totally acceptable.
Well, as I say, I've got an époisse here, which is even a more extreme example. The flavor profile in époisse moves a lot, even over a few days. So it can be.
Yeah.
So Danny, let's go to number 2 and say we are the judges.
Yeah.
What are we going to learn about this cheese that's now? So this is the blue cheese.
Okay.
Come on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got the same one here.
Mm-hmm. So what's our first impressions visually? What can we tell?
Visually, you're looking at those lovely light green blue cavities that are there coming through the pate or the body of the cheese across. Interestingly, not often you get to see the rind of blue cheeses, but, if you do get to see, that's totally fine and 100% edible, because these cheeses are wrapped in foil and they want to have that wet moisture all over and around it. It's totally acceptable.
So let's break that out for the people who are listening. So foil wrap sort of comes from what you might think of the Roquefort, Saint-Agur, Bleu de Verne school of cheese making, where you've got a high level of moisture in the cheese itself, and you often have a loose assemblage of curd, which means you get quite big holes. And actually, this one here nicely shows that kind of little cavity in there, which compared to something like a Stilton, which wouldn't show that, you'd get the mold coming through when you needle the cheese, and it would spread out more like a spider web
So you could see the needle marks coming on
Yeah. So the other really obvious thing, Tanny, is it's a funny color, isn't it?
Yeah. So it is. So this has got a. So it's got the pate is orange in color. Clearly, um, something has been added to it, which is most likely a netto to get that color, and which is again very interesting that you get a blue cheese with an orange pate, which kind of stands out by itself, which is again really nice.
All other things aside, it's great for marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's pick up on that annatto. So the most famous UK cheese, traditional style for annatto for blue would be a Shropshire blue.
Yes.
But that's a harder cheese than this. This cheese is of a softer school. So we've got what I would argue is probably a French-based recipe using annatto to color it. So then it feels again like a modern interpretation. There's no standard that this is going to be a brand, not a PDO or something like that. So what do you think about annatto as a flavor affecting additive? Obviously it makes it orange. Do you have a view about what you think it does to flavor?
No, I don't. I don't think it really does much to the flavor. I think it's purely historically, and I think even today, it's more of a aesthetic tradition that has been. So even French cheeses like Mimolette that use the orange color to make the pate or the body look a bit more colored. Uh, I have not. I don't know if you've come across a network particularly uh, changing the flavor profiles or making a difference.
The school of thought that I come to is it's not supposed to affect flavor. Okay, that is the theory. But in real terms, the difference between Shropshire Blue and Stilton is very, very, very little. You know, they make it exactly the same way, except one's got annatto in it and one doesn't. And so when I look at how they are impacted on the palate, I always think that Shropshire Blue has a softer, less bitter, slightly sweeter outcome than Stilton. So I lean towards it having an impact, and it tends to soften the flavors off. It's like a nice soft filter on some strong flavors. But I'm quite happy to be massively disagreed with. So if you guys watching this today have a comment on whether you think annatto impacts on flavor, let's get the discussion going. Have a view. So what do you think? So tell me about the texture you're experiencing.
Yeah, lovely, kind of very buttery, rich, creamy, and you can see that on the rind. I like the blue. The veining of the cheese has almost become green, and those little green molds have got a bit of almost a growth of fur on it, which I really like. That it almost talks about the aging of the cheese, which is kind of quite nice, and and it almost gives that meaty vegetal finish to the palate.
Yeah, I would say vegetal. I think there's a strong vegetal note, and I would go winter feedy kind of vegetable. Those kind of slightly fermented grasses, slightly fermented herbs.
Absolutely, and very comforting. It's
Yeah,
very soothing. It's not vibrant. It's not lifting you up.
And it leans to me towards a British bitter. So I'm thinking that would be a nice complement to this, a British sort of bitter cheese. So now these first two cheeses we've looked at do not have precedent. They obviously have roots in other areas of cheeseland. You know, use of annatto is old school. The recipe for this, the orange blue here, we've got echoes some of those southern French blues. And likewise, we're looking at these mold ripened goat's cheese, which, you know, goat's cheese is possibly one of the oldest cheeses of all time. This has a very history. But how do you judge something that doesn't have a precedent?
Well, that's very interesting, and it's an amazing question also that you've asked. Typically, with the International Cheese Awards, that's a classic one. Often, when someone's judging a traditional cheese from a certain region that you're not aware of, how do you judge? So it's like a French coming and judging the territorials for us. And they
Hmm.
say, what is this? And or we go and judge. So when we were in uh, Spain 2 years ago, and the amount of manchegos coming through, and we
Yeah.
were like, hang on a minute. But so that's very interesting. I think that's where in the judging scenario we are quick to also understand someone who understands that better to see it
Hmm.
from a perspective very quickly because it's very difficult to judge a manchego or 50 manchegos from a cheddar perspective
Yeah.
or vice versa. So, like you said rightly, forgetting everything, we know a bit about Stilton, we do understand a bit about continental blues, but what we are tasting, this is purely on its own merit.
It's
What
on time.
yeah, we are tasting it, what we're feeling it, and it's for today at this point. It could be different tomorrow or day after, but for now.
I'm just going to make this point. Someone else is picking up. Mr. BJ Obedi is making the point that cheese with a natto as a hobbyist, he's making the point. But the great thing about hobbyists is that they get it wrong as often as they get it right, so they get to see the edges of possibility, possibly more. And he says that red cheese is often smoother and less piquant. So I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
So going back to what you're saying, so when you've got to judge on its own merit, and that gives the classic thing of like, to what extent is judging subjective, and to what extent is it objective? I mean, you and I think that we are qualified judges, but where do we cross the line going, okay, we've done as much objective judging. Now we just got to decide, do we like it? And what is that a real thing? Are judges allowed to say whether they like things or not?
I think absolutely. I mean, often you will see on a table with a group of 4 or 5, when you taste something, you are naturally bound to go, "Oh my God!" You know, without even feeling or trying to control your emotions, you're straight away
Yeah.
going, That's now
Yeah.
how we score it is different, but that emotions come take over straight away, and that's the beauty of being honest about judging, as you say, and you can see that across the board, whether it's continents or whether it's in Britain, uh, and also sometimes people who are very new, they just emote with what they like and what they feel, and
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about judging. I think.
Yeah, there's that moment. Some people call it the wow factor. Some, other people call it, have a more sort of objective way of expression. They say it's got great balance. Something I was trying to explain. We do this in Academy Cheese when we teach. Actually, it's like, how do you explain balance when everything comes together and it's just right? And I would say it's like a band, right? You can have some crappy band doing Oasis in a pub, and it sounds awful, but you can have the same tune done by a proper cheese maker, a proper band, and you are blown away by its quality. And yet the principle, the recipe in the cheese way, and the music and the four-piece band is sort of a parallel there. And I was trying to explain this, and I was using a Scottish analogy. Sometimes when you only have one flavor, it's amazing. It's like listening to bagpipes. The difference between listening to a good bagpiper and a bad bagpiper.
Is massive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So cheese can be like that. Cheese can be like that. And that really kind of, it's the quality of the musician, the quality of the cheesemaker makes sense of the opportunity. Right.
Oh,
You've got one that you've brought to the table. Tell us why you like what you got.
yeah, I've got this one. I just thought something really interesting, something really nice, and also it kind of stands out by itself. So this is a hard classic English territorial, a matured one. And what I wanted to show you was again a lovely coloration along the rind, changing it very gently. And it was the reason also I got it and was because this afternoon when I was judging, I had the sunlight come through the cheese, and it was almost a glow bulb on my cheese board sitting there, which was
Yeah.
beautiful. And I was like, I don't want to cut it because it looks so beautiful. But the minute I cut it, it tasted absolutely amazing. And I was like, wow, I want to get this cheese tonight and have it on the board and talk about it. It's a classic. I think it's one of the very classic red Leicesters, a matured red Leicester. And for me, even more special because of the maturity, it takes me back to my mull days, looking at a mature cheddar, that lovely snap when it's
Mhm.
nice and mature. You get a beautiful bite, and you don't get the flavor till you make your way through the bite to the flavors coming through. So it's
Mhm.
not like something like a soft cheese. Put it on, flavors are immediately coming. And
Yeah.
that's why I thought it would be quite nice to bring it on. And also it's got color, which hopefully will add a bit more flavor to the cream that we are on today. So
Uh-huh. So do you know who makes that cheese?
I'm guessing. I think it's Sparkin or Red Leicester. I may be wrong, but
Joe and David Clark. You just like the name Clark, don't you? It's just like a thing. I'm
but,
married to a Clark, so bring on the Clarks.
but absolutely fantastic. And as I say, look at that, like
Yeah.
great texture.
And it's
Look,
great to see what I always think of a bridesmaid, never the bride type cheese. And Red Leicester is so often in the shadow of cheddar, bluntly. Um, and so a cheese that is, I mean, I'm told that in the 30s, Red Leicester was the most popular cheeses in the UK. So it's been popular in its time. But over the last sort of 70 or 80 years have not treated it well. And we've seen some pretty thin flavored cheeses labeled as Red Leicester. So to see you really promoting one of the great cheeses of the UK because it's impressed you today, and I love your description of the sun. Okay, well, what I've got here is going to be familiar. It's a very, very well-known cheese. So there's two reasons I wanted to talk about this one. This is a Berthaud Epoisse. I know it's Berthaud because I got it out of a box. It said Berthaud on it. And I'm just going to leave that there as it just gently dribbles, right? Okay, I don't know if it's going to fall down, but you can see it. Oh, okay. This, as we're both aware, can be some of the gooeyest, stickiest, and smelliest cheese that you can get on a table. And the reason I wanted to think is that the responsibility of the cheesemaker is to get it to the show in perfect condition. Because your cheddars, your Red Leicesters, you probably got a month when it's tasting perfect. This might have only 6 hours when it's tasting perfect. And competitions, in virtual cheese awards we're talking about today, they've got to get it to 10 different judges or whatever it is all around the country. That's hard. But when you're talking about the World Cheese Awards, when you've got to get all these cheeses to some part of Norway or some such place, getting it through the chill chain to arrive 2 days in advance and be perfect, that's hard. That's very hard.
Very hard.
And get it wrong, I don't know really. So this one has still a hint of firmness towards the center. So I'm going to eat this off my knife. Sorry, Tanny.
Beautiful. It looks lovely.
It's good. It's good. It's very good. It's very good. This one tends to saltiness as it gets older. So I think that we're just getting to that possibly just a little bit too salty, but really nice meaty notes. These washed rind cheeses have meaty notes. So this one's done well. That's done well. Right, Tanny.
Very good.
Good. So thank you for eating 3 more cheeses today when you've already done 45.
No,
that really goes above and beyond. You're a 50 cheese man. You're a 50 cheese man. Go and have a fondue and a cheese sandwich to finish off your day. And thank you so much. And maybe you come back on one day and tell us about some Scottish cheeses. That would be great.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Charlie. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. See you soon, Tanny.
Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.
Right, that was Tanny. Thank you very much, Tanny. I hope you'll stay on my green room so I can chat to him afterwards in a second. What do I need to tell you? Okay, right, I just need to say we've got one more week of Tuesday night. It's cheese night before we break for the summer. We're going to stop over August. I'm coming back on the 1st of September. We're going to take 4 or 5 weeks off. Very French, you might say. So, you can guys go on holiday, and I'll come back invigorated, waiting for the winter season. And hopefully the word COVID will be completely forgotten. Next week, to round up the season, we're actually going to be talking to the people who organise the Virtual Cheese Awards, and we're going to be meeting, we hope, depending on who wins, because that isn't happening until Saturday. We talk about that in a second. We're going to be meeting hopefully one of the winners, or possibly the best in show, the best cheese in 2020, because it's looking like this might be the only cheese awards happening this year. So please follow the Virtual Cheese Awards. Log in. Go to www.virtualcheeseawards.com. Nice, easy name. And tune in on Saturday as they go through the final judging classes, and you can dip in and out and see the judging happening. Nigel Barden, my good mate, will be doing a little bit of jazzing it up and showing you what's going on. Order that box of cheese if you'd like to. Otherwise, just enjoy the world of cheese and get yourself a good beer and settle down to match the day cheese style. So thank you very much for joining me. See you next week. And that's great. All the best. Bye-bye from me.